Why data centers are quietly becoming the world's new strategic oil reserve. For the last century, the most powerful countries on Earth fought over oil, pipelines, tankers, refineries, reserves buried underground. But the next strategic reserve may not be black liquid in a desert. It may be a cold, windowless building filled with blinking lights. Because in the age of artificial intelligence, power is shifting, not from oil to electricity, but from oil to compute. Data centers used to look boring, just servers, cables, cooling fans, concrete boxes outside major cities. But behind those walls is the new fuel of global power, the ability to train AI, control data, run military systems, automate companies, predict markets, and shape the future faster than everyone else. That is why governments are now treating data centers like critical infrastructure. The UK officially designated data centers as critical national infrastructure, putting them beside sectors like energy and water. So the strange question is this: how did the world's most boring buildings become the new oil reserve? To understand that, you have to follow three things: the chips, the power, and the countries trying to control both. But the most valuable thing inside a data center is not the data. It is something much harder to get. Chapter 1. What everyone thinks. At first, the answer seems obvious. People think data centers matter because of the internet. They store photos, stream movies, host websites, run apps, keep banks online. And that is true. For years, data centers were the invisible plumbing of the digital economy. They were important, but not dramatic. Nobody looked at a server building and thought, that is where geopolitics happens. But then AI changed the equation, because normal software mostly stores and moves information. AI consumes compute. A search engine answers a question. But an AI model has to be trained on mountains of data. Then it has to run millions of answers. Then it has to get better. Then it has to do it again. That means every AI boom creates a second boom. Not in apps, in infrastructure. More GPUs, more servers, more land, more cooling, more electricity. The International Energy Agency projects global data center electricity consumption could roughly double from about 485 terawatt-hours in 2025 to about 950 terawatt-hours by 2030. AI-focused data centers grow even faster. That is where the story gets strange. Because if AI is the new brain of the economy, data centers are the skull. They protect it, feed it, cool it, and decide who gets access. So data centers are no longer just warehouses for information. They are factories for intelligence. And whoever owns the factory controls who gets to build the future. But the real story is not that data centers use electricity. The real story is that electricity is becoming a geopolitical weapon. Chapter 2. The money trail. This is where the money starts to move. A modern AI data center is not just real estate. It is a giant financial machine. First, there is the land. Data centers need space near power lines, fiber routes, water sources, and stable grids. That immediately turns boring land into strategic land. Then comes the power. A regular office building wants electricity. An AI data center demands it at massive scale. Some AI campuses are measured not in square feet, but in megawatts and gigawatts. That is the first clue that this is no longer a tech story. It is an energy story. Then come the chips. The most advanced AI chips are not optional. They are the engine. Without them, the building is just expensive air conditioning. This is why high-performance chips have become so politically sensitive. The US has used export controls to restrict advanced AI chips and large AI computing clusters for national security reasons. And then comes the final layer: debt. Because these projects are so expensive, they often require banks, private credit, sovereign wealth funds, cloud companies, and governments to work together. OpenAI's Stargate project, announced with SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX, said it intended to invest up to $500 billion over 4 years into AI infrastructure in the United States. That number matters because it shows how the industry thinks now. AI is no longer just a software race. It is a capital race. And the winners are not just the smartest companies. They are the companies that can secure land, energy, chips, financing, and political approval faster than everyone else. That is why data centers are becoming like oil fields. The value is not just in what they produce. The value is in controlling the scarce input before your rivals do. But unlike oil, compute has one terrifying difference. You cannot store it in a barrel. Chapter 3. The hidden incentive. The hidden machine works like this. A country wants AI leadership. But AI leadership requires models. Models require compute. Compute requires chips. Chips require supply chains. Supply chains require Taiwan, advanced manufacturing, rare equipment, and years of capacity planning. And once the chips arrive, they still need power. Lots of it. Then cooling, then water, then land, then fiber, then permits, then security. So the real bottleneck is not just intelligence, it is infrastructure. This is why data centers are becoming the new strategic reserve. Not because countries can stockpile compute forever, but because they can stockpile the ability to produce compute. Oil reserves are stored energy. Data centers are stored capability. They are the ability to turn electricity into intelligence on demand. That is the hidden incentive. Every country wants sovereign compute, because if your hospitals, banks, defense systems, universities, and companies all depend on foreign AI infrastructure, then your future depends on someone else's switch. Canada has already framed this as a national issue through its sovereign AI compute strategy, which aims to invest in public and commercial infrastructure so Canadian researchers and businesses can access compute capacity. The logic is simple. If oil independence mattered in the 20th century, compute independence may matter in the 21st, because the country that lacks compute does not just fall behind in technology, it rents its intelligence from someone else. And this is where the winners and losers start to separate. Chapter 4. The power shift. This created winners. The first winners are the chip companies. If GPUs are the engines of AI, then companies that make them become the arms dealers of the intelligence age. The second winners are the hyperscalers, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Oracle. They already had cloud infrastructure. Now they are turning that infrastructure into strategic territory. The third winners are energy-rich regions, places with cheap power, cold climates, strong grids, or renewable energy can suddenly attract massive investment. A region that used to sell electricity can now sell intelligence production. But there are losers too. The first losers are countries without chips. They may have smart engineers, they may have great startups, but without enough compute, they are stuck waiting in line. The second losers are local power grids, because a data center can arrive like a digital factory, but consume electricity like a heavy industrial plant. In some regions, AI and data center expansion is already raising concerns about grid pressure, new generation needs, and infrastructure delays. The IEA says data center electricity demand is growing far faster than overall electricity demand. The third losers are smaller companies, because when compute becomes scarce, the biggest players can buy first. They can sign long-term power deals, reserve chip capacity, build private data centers, raise billions in debt. A small AI startup may have the idea, but the giant has the machines. And then everything changed, because governments realized this was not just competition between companies. It was competition between nations. Data centers became part of industrial policy. Chip access became diplomacy. Power grids became AI strategy. And suddenly, a server farm in Texas, Ireland, Singapore, Saudi Arabia, or Canada was not just a tech facility. It was a geopolitical asset. But the same thing that makes data centers powerful also makes them dangerously fragile. Chapter 5. The fragile part. The genius of this system is also its weakness. Oil has obvious vulnerabilities. Pipelines can be cut, tankers can be blocked, refineries can be attacked. But compute has quieter vulnerabilities. A chip shortage, a grid bottleneck, a cooling failure, a cyber attack, a water shortage, a permitting delay, a new export rule. A data center looks solid from the outside, but inside it is a balancing act. Electricity has to flow every second. Heat has to be removed constantly. Servers have to stay online. Security has to hold. And the chips inside may depend on a supply chain that stretches across the world. This is why high-performance AI chips have become so sensitive that smuggling allegations now make international news. Taiwanese prosecutors recently investigated alleged smuggling of servers containing advanced NVIDIA chips to China using forged export documents. That is not normal electronics trade. That is strategic competition. Because the new oil does not move in barrels. It moves inside GPUs. And the new refinery is not on the coast. It is inside a data center. But there is another contradiction. The world wants more AI, but AI needs more power. The world wants cleaner energy, but data centers need electricity right now. The world wants sovereign compute, but the supply chain is global. The world wants independence, but nobody is truly independent. The chips may be designed in America, manufactured in Taiwan, packaged in Asia, installed in Texas, financed by Japan or the Gulf, powered by local grids, used by companies around the world. So the sovereign data center is never fully sovereign. It is a national asset built from global dependencies. That is the fragile part. And the bigger the AI race gets, the more every country faces the same question. Can you control the future if the future depends on parts you do not control? And that leads to the real truth. Data centers are not replacing oil because they are similar. They are replacing oil because they create the same kind of dependence. Chapter 6. The Big Lesson. The lesson is not that data centers are valuable. Everyone knows that now. The real lesson is that every era has a resource that decides who gets leverage. For empires, it was land. For industrial powers, it was coal. For the 20th century, it was oil. For the AI age, it may be compute, not data alone, not software alone, not algorithms alone. Compute, the ability to process the world faster than your rivals, to train better models, automate more work, discover new materials, simulate weapons, detect threats, optimize supply chains, control financial systems, and make decisions at machine speed. That is why data centers are becoming the new strategic oil reserve. They are not glamorous. They do not look powerful. They do not have flags waving above them. But neither did oil wells before the world understood what they meant. The countries that win the next era may not be the ones with the most apps. They may be the ones with the most secure compute, the cheapest power, the strongest grids, the most advanced chips, and the political will to build before everyone else. Because AI does not float in the cloud. It lives somewhere, in a building, on land, connected to power, protected by law, financed by capital, and fought over by nations. The future will not run on oil alone. It will run on electricity, silicon, cooling fans, and whoever controls the machines that turn them into intelligence. The next superpower may not be the country with the deepest oil reserves, but the country with the most machines thinking in the dark.